everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Tone back again with another video, and as you can see the setup has changed somewhat, and as you guys can see, no doubt tell, our setup has changed a little bit, ever so slightly, because I was gifted some new equipment for my birthday, which passed last week. So thank you very much to my friends for their generosity and their contribution to this channel, and hopefully this will afford me the opportunity to bring better quality content to you guys going forward. So now that the admin is out of the way, what you guys are here for is for a book review. And today we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite books, which was originally a play written by Arthur Miller, and it's called The Crucible. As per usual, I'm going to read you a bit of the synopsis, and then I'm going to tell you what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, if anything, and my favorite characters, as well as my rating for this book. So here we go. I believe that the reader will discover the essential nature of one of the strangest and most awful chapters in human history. Arthur Miller wrote this of his classic play about the witch hunts and trials in 17th century Salem, Massachusetts. Based on historical people and real events, Miller's drama is a searing portrait of a community engulfed by hysteria. In the rigid theocracy of Salem, rumors that women are practicing witchcraft galvanize the town's most basic fears and suspicions. And when a young girl accuses Elizabeth Proctor of being a witch, self-righteous church leaders and townspeople insist that Elizabeth must be brought to trial. The ruthlessness of prosecutors and eagerness of neighbors to testify against neighbor brutally eliminates the destructive power of socially sanctioned violence. The Crucible is the mirror Miller uses to reflect anti-communist hysteria inspired by Senator Joseph McCarthy's witch hunts in the United States. Within the text itself, Miller contemplates the parallels of writing. Political opposition is given inhumane overlay, which then justifies an abrogation of all normally applied customs of civilized behavior. A political policy is equated with moral right, and opposition to it with diabolical malevolence. So I'm going to stop that right there, because that is not only a synopsis of the book, but it's also kind of some commentary about what the book is what the play is basically about. And I chose this particular book to review this week because I feel it's very apt in the global political climate that we find ourselves in. I find that regardless of where in the world you are, this concept of moral outrage based on an ideology or religious belief or cultural position very much drives human interaction with each other. But I will talk about that a bit later. But firstly, what I do want to discuss is basically what happens in the play. So in this town called Salem, it's basically, you have to think of olden days America, not long settled America by European migrants. In this town called Salem, independent, self-sufficient women who do not follow the conventional mores of that society were persecuted. So what you were having was situations whereby women who were midwives were being persecuted if a baby died during childbirth, or if the mother died during childbirth, or if they had an outstandingly abnormally high rates of success for childbirth, they were accused of witchcraft. And it was basically colored by grievances that they might have had with somebody else in their community. Adulteresses were persecuted and accused of being witches. Women that were single and did not choose to marry were persecuted and accused of being witches. And they basically, what ended up happening was that anybody that somebody had a grievance against could easily become accused of witchcraft in Salem. And this kind of left to the witchcraft trials, which were basically like a public mob mentality, vigilante justice kind of system. And no matter how the women who were accused tried to argue it, they could never ever prove that they weren't witches. And the only way that you could prove you weren't a witch is at the trial, if you were found guilty, I think they kind of tied their ankles with rope and bind them with rocks and sunk them in a river. And if they were not able to, if they drowned, then they were declared innocent and of witchcraft. But if their bodies floated to the top for whatever reason and they didn't drown, then they were accused of being witches, and then they were stoned and burned to death anyway. So it's a very, very rich, interesting story, just the way your neighbor could turn against you at the drop of a dime, or the way that somebody could start a rumor about you and that could basically lead to your persecution. And the way that people kind of went along with this persecution, because in a way, if you can't beat them, join them. And, I don't want them to accuse me of being a witch. So I've got to go along with the majority so that, somebody will not decide for some reason that because I'm not with them and I'm against them and therefore must be a witch myself. So a lot of that was happening in the play. It was so rich. It was so interesting. And it kind of puts me in mind of many things that are happening in our society today. If you look in Britain, for example, this Brexit idea, the way that this decision to stay or leave the European Union has became less political and more like a morality-driven thing. So, basically you're having one side that is saying that, if you want to leave the European Union, then you're kind of like a separatist, or, harbor some kind of racist ideology or whatever, what have you. And therefore that's why you want to leave. And then those people that are saying that if you want to stay in, then you're not patriotic, and so on and so forth. When the idea of staying on or leaving the European Union has got nothing to do with your moral position on social issues. It's just basically an economically driven, long-term or short-term economically driven situation. So that's one example in the UK where I see it happening. Another example where I see it happening, it also put me in mind of the genocide that happened in Rwanda. I think for me, genocide, modern day genocide, is one of the best examples of the Salem witch trial happening in effect. If you haven't seen it, there's a movie called Hotel Rwanda. And this is basically, it gives you a very, very good idea of how neighbors turned against neighbors, friends turned against friends, and basically a certain tribe of people were hunted down to near extinction. And it wasn't until international journalism picked it up that something was done about it. That was a brilliant movie, so I suggest you watch that movie as well as read The Crucible to get some kind of idea of what I'm talking about. There weren't really, I can't say that there was one character that was my favorite or one that wasn't. Elizabeth Proctor obviously was a very interesting character because you really felt for her. I would give this book or play a 4.2 out of 5. Even though it's a very old book, well, not very old, but it's, it's like early 20th or mid 20th century book. And I still feel that lots of things that happen in the book, even though it was set in the 18th century, a lot of those things are still prevalent today, and nothing much has changed. And in a sense, that says a lot about global social commentary, and things that we need to think about as to how we're progressing as human beings, and how we have not changed and how we have not developed. So please, please, please pick up this book. I highly, highly recommend it. Let me know your thoughts. If you really, really enjoy this story as much as I did, please leave your comments down below. If you didn't like it, please let me know why. As per usual, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And until next time, bye.